Please subscribe, hit the like button, and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Nathan Carter, and my stepfather, Marcus, made me sign school forms when I was 12 years old. At 25, I discovered those papers, transferred my $900,000 trust fund from my deceased father to Marcus's 3 biological children, leaving me with nothing while they built lives on my inheritance. I found out by accident while helping my half-brother, Tyler, move into his new apartment. Tyler was 23, freshly graduated from an expensive private university I'd never been able to afford. He'd just put a down payment on a luxury apartment I couldn't dream of renting. "How do you afford this place?" I asked, genuinely curious. Tyler had only been working for 6 months. "Trust fund kicked in when I turned 21, Tyler said casually. "Dad set it up years ago." "Didn't you get yours?" My blood went cold. "What trust fund?" "The one Dad managed for all of us." "Mine was around $300,000. Chloe and Ryan got theirs too when they turned 21. $300,000 times 3 kids. That was $900,000. The exact amount my biological father had left me. When he died, my father died in a construction accident when I was 8. He'd had life insurance and savings $900,000. Total that was supposed to be held in trust for me until I turned 20-5. My mother remarried when I was 10. Marcus, her new husband, had 3 kids from his previous marriage, Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan. They were all younger than me. When I was 12, Marcus had sat me down with a stack of papers. "These are forms we need to sign for your school," he'd said. "Financial aid applications, scholarship stuff. Your mom and I need you to sign where I've marked." I'd been 12. I'd trusted my stepfather. I'd signed where he pointed maybe 20 different forms without reading them. "Did Dad manage your trust, too?" Tyler asked, oblivious to the horror spreading through me. "I need to go," I said, my voice hollow. I drove straight to the county records office and requested any documents filed in my name around the time I was 12. The clerk found them. Trust transfer documents, signed by me, with my 12-year-old signature, transferring my father's trust fund to a new trust managed by Marcus with Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan listed as equal beneficiaries. My stepfather had stolen my entire inheritance and divided it among his biological children. I called an attorney specializing in trust fraud the next morning. "But Wells, I was 12 when I signed these," I said, showing her the documents. "My stepfather told me they were school forms. I didn't know I was signing away my trust fund." Patricia reviewed everything with increasing anger. "A 12-year-old can't legally sign away a trust fund. These documents should be void. Your stepfather committed fraud and likely forgery. Your mother's signature is on some of these as co-trustee, but I'd bet money that's fake too. My mother knew about the trust from my father. She would never have agreed to this." "Which means your stepfather forged her signature and manipulated you into signing documents you couldn't legally consent to. This is criminal." I hired a private investigator to dig deeper. What he found made everything worse. Marcus had been planning this for years. He'd researched trust law, learned about the vulnerabilities when a minor child had a single surviving parent with remarriage. He'd specifically targeted my mother not for love, but for access to my trust fund. The investigator found Marcus's old computer files, recovered through digital forensics, emails to lawyers asking hypothetical questions about trust transfers, searches about getting stepchild to sign documents and transferring minors' inheritance legally. Marcus had married my mother specifically to steal my inheritance. But it got darker. The investigator discovered Marcus had taken out a large life insurance policy on my mother 3 years after they married, $500,000 with Marcus as the sole beneficiary. My mother had died 2 years ago from what Marcus said was a sudden illness, heart failure, at 52. I'd been devastated, lost in grief. Now, I was looking at evidence that Marcus had insured her death for $500,000, right around the time he'd successfully transferred my trust fund to his kids. "You think he killed her?" the investigator asked. "I think we need to find out." I hired a forensic pathologist to review my mother's death certificate and medical records. "Heart failure at 52 with no previous cardiac issues," Dr. Morrison said, reviewing the files. "That's unusual but not impossible. However, the symptoms described in her final weeks: confusion, weakness, nauseous, could also indicate poisoning. Can we prove it? If we exhume the body and test for toxins, possibly. Some poisons remain detectable years after death, but it requires court approval and strong evidence to justify exhumation. Patricia filed a motion to void the trust transfer based on fraud and my inability to legally consent at 12. She also filed complaints with law enforcement about the forged signatures and potential life insurance fraud. The trust case moved quickly. The judge reviewed the evidence: my 12-year-old signature, Marcus's documented research into manipulating trust transfers, the forged signature of my mother, and ruled the transfer void. A 12-year-old child cannot legally consent to transferring a trust fund, the judge stated. These documents are fraudulent and void. The original trust is restored with Nathan Carter as sole beneficiary. Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan were ordered to return the money they'd received, $300,000 each plus interest. Total restitution, approximately $1 million. They didn't have it. They'd spent most of it on college tuition, apartments, cars, and lifestyle. Marcus's biological children had built their lives on my stolen inheritance, and now they were facing massive debts to repay it. But I wasn't satisfied with just getting my money back. I wanted Marcus to face consequences for what I was increasingly certain he'd done: murdered my mother for insurance money after stealing my inheritance. We petitioned for the exhumation of my mother's body. The judge granted it based on the pattern of financial fraud and the suspicious timing of her death following the large life insurance policy. The toxicology results took 3 months. When they came back, they confirmed what I'd suspected: high levels of antifreeze in her bone tissue. Ethylene glycol poisoning, slow, deliberate, mimicking natural illness. Marcus had poisoned my mother to collect life insurance money after using her to access and steal my trust fund. Law enforcement arrested Marcus for murder, fraud, and financial exploitation. The evidence was overwhelming. The forged trust transfer documents, proof he'd researched trust manipulation before marrying my mother, the life insurance policy taken out suspiciously early in the marriage, and the toxicology showing deliberate poisoning. Marcus's attorney tried to build a defense, but it collapsed under the weight of evidence. The prosecution presented a clear timeline. Marcus had targeted my mother to access my trust fund, manipulated me into signing transfer documents at 12, forged my mother's signature, successfully stolen $900,000, then poisoned her for an additional $500,000 in insurance money. Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan were devastated. They'd believed their father when he said the trust funds were his gift to them. Learning that their money came from their murdered stepmother's son's inheritance destroyed them. "We didn't know," Tyler told me when the truth came out. "We thought Dad was just good with money, that he'd saved and invested for us. We had no idea. You spent my inheritance while I worked 3 jobs through college," I said coldly. "You lived in luxury on money stolen from me after your father killed my mother. Whether you knew or not, you benefited from his crimes." The trial lasted 5 weeks. I testified about the school forms Marcus had me sign at 12. Forensic experts testified about the forged signatures and poisoning. Financial experts detailed the theft and insurance fraud. Marcus was convicted on all counts: first-degree murder, fraud, forgery, financial exploitation, and insurance fraud. The judge sentenced him to life without parole plus 30 years. But Marcus's conviction was just the beginning of my revenge. Marcus's biological children, Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan, were financially destroyed by the restitution order. They had to repay $1 million they didn't have. Everything they'd bought with my stolen money was C.S. Tyler's apartment, Chloe's car, Ryan's investment accounts. They declared bankruptcy. But the debt wasn't dischargeable because it stemmed from fraud. Their wages would be garnished for decades. They'd spend the rest of their lives paying back money their father stole, while mine was stolen from me. But I took my revenge further than legal consequences. I contacted every institution Marcus's kids had attended with my stolen money: the private schools, the expensive universities, the programs they'd participated in. I provided documentation showing their education was funded by stolen money from their murdered stepmother's child. Some schools revoked their degrees, citing ethical violations. Others allowed them to keep credentials, but noted in their records the fraudulent funding source. Either way, their reputations were destroyed. I contacted their employers, their professional networks, and their social circles. Made sure everyone knew Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan had built their lives on stolen inheritance from a murder victim. They lost jobs, lost friends, lost relationships. Their names became associated with their father's crimes, the children who benefited from murder and theft. We didn't know, Tyler said again when everything collapsed around them. Please, we were victims too. You were beneficiaries, I corrected. You lived lives I should have lived, using money that was mine, while I struggled and your father murdered my mother. Whether you knew or not, you participated in the crime. Tyler attempted suicide 2 years after Marcus's conviction, devastated by debt, isolation, and the destruction of everything he'd thought was his. He survived, but the attempt left him with permanent complications. Chloe moved across the country trying to escape her father's reputation. But I made sure the truth followed her. Every job she applied for, every relationship she tried to build, I ensured people knew her life had been funded by stolen money and murder. Ryan became a recluse, unable to cope with the guilt and shame. Last I heard, he was living in a small apartment, working minimum wage, his degree worthless, and his future destroyed. I got my trust fund back $900,000 plus interest and growth, now worth approximately $1.2 million. Used it to finish my education properly, buy a house, and invest for the future. But money wasn't enough. I wanted Marcus to suffer beyond prison. I contacted Marcus's ex-wife Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan's mother and showed her evidence that Marcus had been planning to steal from my trust fund before he'd even divorced her, that he'd strategically left their marriage to pursue my mother for financial gain. She realized her ex-husband was a predator who'd used everyone, including their children. She cut contact with Marcus completely and testified at parole hearings to ensure he'd never be released. I attended every parole hearing Marcus had given. Though he was sentenced to life without parole, he could petition for clemency. At each hearing, I testified about what he'd done, made sure the board understood he'd married my mother to steal from her son, then murdered her for insurance money. Marcus aged rapidly in prison. The stress, the guilt, the knowledge he'd destroyed his own children's lives, along with Minute, broke him. He developed severe depression, attempted suicide twice, and spent years in psychiatric isolation. 10 years after his conviction, Marcus was 65, permanently in medical isolation, mentally shattered, physically deteriorating. He'd likely die in prison decades before his sentence technically ended. Tyler, Chloe, and Ryan were 33 and 29, all broken by debt, reputation destruction, and the knowledge that their lives had been built on murder. Their relationships with each other had fractured under the weight of shared shame. I was 30, financially secure, successful, with justice for my mother's murder and my stolen inheritance, but I carried the trauma of losing her to a man who'd targeted us for money. Some people suggested I should show mercy to Marcus's children, that they were victims too, that they hadn't known about their father's crimes. Those people don't understand what it's like to sign papers as a trusting 12-year-old and lose everything, to work 3 jobs through college while your step-siblings lived in luxury on your stolen money, to discover that your mother was murdered by the man she loved for insurance money. Marcus made me sign papers as a child that transferred my trust fund to his biological children. Then he murdered my mother for additional insurance money. I got my inheritance back and ensured Marcus will die in prison, but I also insured his children who'd lived on my stolen money the rest of their lives, paying it back while their reputations were permanently destroyed. Tyler has permanent health issues from his suicide attempt. Chloe is isolated and alone across the country. Ryan is a recluse, barely surviving. All 3 carry debts they'll never fully repay and shame they'll never escape. Marcus is mentally broken, physically failing, and will die imprisoned, knowing he destroyed his own children's lives, along with stealing from me and murdering my mother. Some call that excessive revenge. I call it proportional to stealing a child's inheritance, murdering a woman for insurance money, and forcing an entire family to pay for one man's greed. Marcus thought he could steal from a child and get away with it. He was wrong. And everyone connected to his crimes, including his biological children, is still paying for that mistake.